Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Timothy Adams, and I haven't made a Dungeons and Dragons series called The Dice Decide.
Hey everyone, this is haven't made it yet. But it's a miracle I even figured out how to turn on this recorder thing. I'm Yannick Ehret, and I'm here with Hayden Garrett. Say something, Hayden. Just kidding, Hayden's not here. I'm recording this intro separately. He was here for the interview though, which is good because he's a huge nerd, and so is our guest this time around. And I guess so am I. But yeah, if you're into Dungeons and Dragons, this one will be for you. And also, if you're not into Dungeons and Dragons, still some very useful tips here from Joe, camera operator Joe, who specifically does a lot of BTS stuff, but he's got a lot of good tips on how to transition from being a PA to a camera focus and how to leverage your social media and your work with cameras into getting gear. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this episode, and we miss you, Hayden. I miss you. It's just me. But he's here in the interview, so enjoy.
Making it for me is the ability to pay my friends to make movies with me or just work on projects with me. I think that's it. I think it's just working with friends, and if I can pay my friends to, have some sort of sustainability, I think I've made it. That's it.
Yeah.
I just want to work with my friends.
I think, that's honestly, Yannick and I have talked about this a lot, but that's why we made a production company, Indie Not Films, and this is why we've made this podcast, so we can just make more friends in the process. But we want to make friends, but also pay them what they're worth, which they're worth above and beyond what we can do now. But hopefully we can keep going and pay them what they deserve.
Exactly. Because it's not all about the money, but it's just about we have to make ends meet. No matter what way you look at it, you still have bills, you still have this, you still have to pay for food. And if I can just be a source of that income or a source of that means, then let's just hang out, make some fun stuff, and make money.
I feel like a lot of times I do already get to work with my friends, which is awesome, but it's usually never on a project that I'm like, yes, that's rare. So
Yes.
Being able to have it be exactly the project you want to be doing with your friends is like the triple threat.
Yeah.
And you worked on a project. This is a project that you made, The Dice Decide. This is hence where you give the plug.
We go into So I created a YouTube show called The Dice Decide. It's an actual play of Dungeons and Dragons, and the thing with the other thing I need to note with it being a Dungeons and Dragons, it's an unofficial Dungeons and Dragons show. So it's not supported by Wizards or Hasbro or anything like that. I do have to mention that.
Yeah.
Because that's part of doing D&D content or fan made content is there certain IP
what it is now, which is
to be aware of.
like
on
a
Wizards,
camera
on their website,
aficionado who has all these brand deals and all these exciting projects going on. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this episode.
And there's other stipulations of you can't use this in any negative.
We miss you, Hayden.
So whatever that is,
I miss you. It's just
it
me.
It has to be free.
But he's here in the interview, so enjoy.
You have to use
can't get paid.
It's not that you can't get paid. So you can get ad revenue, you can get YouTube sponsors and stuff like that, but you can't put it behind a paywall.
Yeah.
So you can't like Netflix. Netflix you have to pay a subscription to watch that. So you can't say it's a D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, and have a paywall.
Has that
Very specific.
Have there been shows that have changed over time, or it started unofficial but then got kind of picked up by Wizards? Or
I would imagine. I couldn't say for sure, but I can look at Critical Role, and I can say that I actually don't know for a fact, but I'm assuming they are sponsored by Wizards. But there's also there's so many other stipulations. I know swearing is also a weird thing. like if you have a bunch of like, profanity or whatever in your shows, or for your audience needs to be a different like PG-13 rated or whatever you want to call it, they might not sponsor you. So it really depends. But I'm pretty sure Critical Role is, but don't quote me. Could be wrong. But I know a lot of people it's still a role playing like tabletop show. They might just not even be using like because my show is Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
It is for what I've created. That's what it is. Because like I could technically have went a different direction, but the story actually has to do with Dungeons and Dragons.
Got it.
Because just from watching the behind the scenes material, and we'll cue your Instagram in the description and everything, but like I would assume that D&D or Wizards of the Coast had some element of it because of how like it looks professional. It looks like some of the stuff that you're putting in your behind the scenes stuff is like really like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see like D&D coming to life.
Yeah, no, it is. Since the very beginning, I wanted to make sure that this was like one of the highest production value shows.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. 2 reasons. 1, because I knew it's a selling point. And 2, because I knew a lot of people would be interested in seeing a high production value show. There are a lot of D&D related content out there.
Yeah.
Tons.
It's like podcasts,
yes.
full podcasts.
And there's nothing wrong with a lot of those shows, but I didn't want to make a show where it's just we're on our computers and you see us talking. I didn't want that. I wanted it to be very cinematic because I am a cinematographer. I wanted lighting cues. I wanted lighting effects. I want even like with our miniatures, like I have plans of specific elements that are going to change while we're playing. And even for the players, like I think it'd be really exciting if you're, I don't know, we're not doing this, but like if there was like an earthquake and all of a sudden like the pieces on the board started shaking or like stuff like that. I think that
Immersion.
I love immersion. That's what I wanted. I see you some magic cards.
Oh yeah, we've been
time.
Who both?
Yeah.
One?
Both.
yeah,
What do you guys normally play?
we're a commander
Yeah.
is
Mother, why didn't I bring my deck?
oh my god.
Why didn't you tell me? I would have brought my fucking deck.
Well, we got more. We got
We can play after this.
You wanna
guys
do
want-
it?
We can. I would love to play. Yeah, no, I feel like it's always like D&D and Magic and all that like stuff.
Yeah.
It all like meshes together.
it's one big cult.
Exactly. No, I've been playing a little bit in high school, but more in college. And
Okay.
EDH has been my go-to, just because I used to play Standard a lot of Standard, but like I would
price.
just pour money into it, and then like looking back, I'm like, I probably shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
It's so much money. It's so much money
Yeah.
to keep up with it.
It's good to have a budget. I started with Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, same.
All of my friends, we did $20 a month budget. You can do it on any card. You can spend $20 on a card.
Oh gosh.
But you have only that $20, and then it carries over to the next month.
Or multiple, right? You can.
Or you can have multiple. You can make a whole deck
That's
with
your
$20
budget.
if you want.
It's so hard to justify spending $200 on one card.
Yeah.
When I can spend $200, $300 on like camera equipment.
Right.
Like I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Especially like I feel like freelancing where there's always a possible, you can always be better at your job or whatever you do if you pour more money into that, or into the other thing where with like a normal job where everything is provided, or like it's harder to have hobbies when you're freelance.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah, definitely.
because you feel so much guilt about any money you spend that's not towards like your goal.
But the thing I found very interesting with, especially being like freelance and having hobbies, is you get to a certain point where your hobbies can become your like freelance job. I mean, that's exactly what I did with like the D&D stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, so like, you have your main hustle, and then you have your side hustle, whatever that is. And then eventually your side hustle becomes your main hustle. And then that's how I've always seen it.
Well, with freelancing, and I want to get into what you do and everything, but on the focus on freelancing, your hobbies become a part of your job, and it's almost like it's this balance that you have to take of how much do I actually want to make this my job? How much, because we're all our own bosses, and we're all trying to see how can I make the things I love to do and make money out of it. But like finding that balance of maybe I want to just draw for my own personal benefit and not put that out onto social media, or maybe I do want to put that out and make a little bit of money, and trying to pay rent while doing the things we love at the same time.
Well, because also it becomes like, it's one of those things where it stops being fun and it becomes a job.
Yeah.
And once it becomes a job, then I think it stops being fun. So I think that's like the biggest thing to keep in mind is like whatever you have, you have to do things that are fun, and then you have to do things that are business. And sometimes it's really difficult to marry the two.
Yeah.
But if you can find that little needle in the haystack, I think that's what, I don't know, that becomes happiness.
Yeah.
When you talked about your D&D project and recording that and making a series out of that, has that snuck into that project at all? That feeling of, oh, I'm selling out my hobby, or how is that world?
Not yet. And honestly, I've had a lot of time to think about like the creation of the show. I fell in love with Dungeons and Dragons in high school. Friends and I played 4th edition for a little bit, and I have a personality type I become obsessed. So immediately after we were done playing that one night, I think the next day I went out and I bought all 3 books. I bought a bunch of miniatures, and I think in my head I spent like $200 or $300. And at the time I was like, this is like my whole 2 weeks of work right here. And then I just went out and blew it all in one night on D&D books. And
As one does.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, I'm
so
the same
I
way.
became super obsessed. So then from there we played a little bit, and then I think it might have been my senior year. I can't recall. And then after that, when I went off to college, I expected to play a lot more D&D in college. I was like, oh, there'll be a D&D club, right? Like, oh, I'll find all the nerdy people. And there wasn't one.
That is
So-
weird.
Where did you go?
I went to Kent State in Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Ohio. There wasn't like a D&D club. So I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm going to start my own. So I actually started a D&D club at my college. Ran it for three years. We had like 60 plus members.
Wow.
And it was super fun. So that's sort of like my big introduction to like D&D. And then
Origin story.
And then I moved out to Los Angeles. As you two know, and as maybe other listeners know, that Los Angeles is a very difficult place to like get people to like meet up for whatever reason. So I actually didn't play D&D for a really long time. I think I played once or twice in probably 7 years. During the pandemic, I had a lot of time on my hand. And I was like, well, what I've always wanted to do was build D&D terrain. I've always wanted to do that. And so I was like, well, I have time. Let's buy a 3D printer. I started watching YouTube videos, and I've quickly discovered it's a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Every time you see like all these like really cool terrains and all these really cool models, you always see the final product, right? You never see all the steps before. And when I started watching a couple of these YouTube channels, it's only a few steps, and then a lot of like dry brushing. I don't know if do you do any like modeling?
Just from
Not much.
No, like I said, it's not as difficult as you would think. Because like I'm not an artist at all. I don't paint. I don't draw. I don't do any of that stuff. When I started doing it, and 3-4 steps, 4 or 5 different paints of gray, I had some really cool dungeon tiles. And I just YouTube videos, tutorials, and I started just mass producing these like D&D terrain type of things. And then I'm like, well, I need to make money because it's the pandemic. I'm like, I don't know when my next job is.
I'm sure making the terrain and everything costs a lot as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I had this idea that I was on Kickstarter. And I was looking at all these different campaigns of people. What they would do is they would have a 3D file, and they would sell the 3D file.
Okay.
Whatever their theme is. They have a medieval castle, and if you donate so much X or whatever, you'll get more benefits and stuff.
That's a really good idea for like a investor perk.
Exactly. So I looked at that and I go, well, it would be really cool if I can approach these companies and go, hey, I see that your, whatever your model is, let's say it's a castle, right? I can 3D print this, I can paint this, I can film almost like a commercial for your Kickstarter. Like that was like my idea. And like maybe we work out some sort of deal. It's like, oh, I'll get a percentage of your Kickstarter, or you can pay me a flat fee. And I can do all this at my house. It wouldn't be too difficult. Like I have a printer now. I can print this. I can paint it.
Was this still doing like quarantine-ish times
Yes,
where you
yeah.
were just stuck at home?
Yeah. So I was like, well, I can do that. So that was sort of like the idea in the beginning. So I'm like, oh, I'll make little commercial stuff. And then I felt like things started going back to normal-esque, and I started getting really busy. And I had all these I had a lot of terrain that I built.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Did these companies, did it work? Like when you approached them, did they?
so I approached a couple of people, and a couple people were interested, but I never really I didn't follow up again with them just because I got busy.
Right.
So then it's like, okay, I think there's probably a good 4 months where I was completely dead. And then after those 4 months, it was like nonstop.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, okay, things are kind of going back to normal to a certain extent. And like, it's busy now because everyone's trying to get caught up with everything. And now I have all this terrain, right? And I've always, also in the back of my mind, I was like, well, I can make a show, right? I think I have the ability to make a really high production value show. And I really wanted to model it after, there's a show by College Humor called Dimension 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be familiar with it.
I've seen a couple.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal. I've watched a few of their seasons, and I wanted to sort of mimic sort of what they do. And also the other reason was I always wanted to work on that show.
Yeah.
Like I thought it would be so much fun. It's phenomenal. The characters, everything that they create and make is so cool. And it's actually kind of funny because the production designer that's on that show is named Rick Perry. I'm actually friends with him. I know him. We did some stuff at UCLA when I was helping out a friend on his sets, and Rick was the production designer for those for thesis and stuff like that.
Sounds like such a fun job being production designer for
Oh,
a
yeah.
D&D
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Getting clammy hands over here just
I
like,
know, right?
thinking about it.
With my knowledge of D&D and becoming a cinematographer when I moved out to Los Angeles with the pandemic and having all these terrain, and I was like, well, fuck it, let's make a show. Like that was sort of like the drive, and with I've been talking about it for 2 years, because probably 2 years after like the pandemic and everything, and I didn't want it to be one of those things where you just talk about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happens with a lot of projects. It's like, oh, we have this. Oh, I have, this, and this. Let's do it. And then it never actually comes.
And I want to focus on that. I keeping going, but focusing on what do you think is the drive that pushed you into talking about it, into doing it? A lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
Of like, I have a lot of friends that have great ideas that just need to do it. And what gets you to do your projects?
I feel like it's different for everyone. But the way that I looked at it was I just had to set a date.
Yeah.
Like I knew a relative time frame. I can't remember the exactly when I was like, oh, I'm gonna pick whatever. It was like I forget when we filmed, but it was like, oh, the second of this month. I know we're gonna film there, and I know I need about 3 months to get everything finalized. Building all the stuff that I need to do, and for me, it's one of those things where I just need to set a date.
Yeah.
I need to set a date, and then I need to have people who are going to hold me accountable.
That's a big part. Yeah.
Because if if it's like if everyone expects you to do something, it's like you have to follow up with it.
That's how you get people to hold you accountable. It's just by telling them about it. Or?
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, we're gonna do it on, let's just say, the 2nd. And I told my friend who had a studio space, I said, hey, we're gonna film on the 2nd. Well, it was like a 3-day shoot, so we're gonna film on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And we're gonna film then. And he's like, okay, sounds good. I'll hold the space for you. And then I told everyone else, and then I was like, okay, we're doing this.
You're in.
Yeah.
Let's
Now we
have to do it.
now we have to do
You
it.
don't have a choice. And
Yeah.
I've always been that way. I've always been where I have to jump in the deep end or I'm not going to do it. If my back's not against the wall, it's not going to happen.
Well, and that's very much a dungeon master personality of like, if you want to play D&D, not many people like, you have to rally the troops. You have to get the group together just so you can play the thing. You can't, it's really hard to be a player in D&D and be like, oh, I want to play D&D, but you need to find someone to actually like orchestrate what D&D is.
Yeah.
So
and that's honestly my main motivation also was I just want to play D&D.
Exactly.
And it's like I can't get anyone to commit. Like I'm currently in a game right now with some friends, and you know, we have so much fun, but it's like we'll meet once every other month. And I'm like I just want to have something consistent once a week, something like that. But it's near impossible. Then I'm like, okay, I'll start a show and I will pay my friends to play
then
D&D.
they have to.
Like, then now you have to show up.
Yeah.
So that was sort of like my idea, an idea also in the beginning. It's like, well, I'm going to pay you. Let's play D&D.
So it was your friends that you ended up hiring for the project?
No, not exactly. So in the process of creating the show, like I had an idea of some people that I wanted to be in there, and then I started talking to them. A couple people, they agreed, and then I also got a couple recommendations. But I think the whole idea with the first round of filming, because I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. Like I didn't know if this was going to continue, because I knew, I don't want to say kill the show, but what's going to be a very determining factor is money. That's going to be the hardest part. So like, well, I figured maybe I can either shoot it, and if it does well, we'll continue, or I can shoot it and it's almost like a test pilot. So I can shoot this and be like, hey, you know, this is what we can offer you, and we can try to pitch it to, you know, studios or some sort of like, you know, I don't know, someone who has a financial person who's like, hey, I can back you guys with some money. So those are always like the two options that we always had. Currently, right now with the show, there was a couple creative differences with what we've been doing, and I have to reshoot what we already shot, which I'm happy and sad about. I think they had different expectations than what I presented.
Yeah.
Which with any project, I think it's good and bad. You know, I think you have to take from that and you have to learn.
Or you're working with artists, and everybody wants to make their art, and trying to collaborate into making art together is accident waiting to happen.
Yeah.
But that's every single project.
Yeah. And also with Dungeons and Dragons, and I think I made a big mistake is because it's a show, because I wanted to rely very heavily on visual. I wanted to build the sets. If they go to a certain location, I wanted to build that. I wanted to craft that. So when they're like, oh, we're going to go to this house on the outskirts of town and there's a farm, right? I wanted to have a building with a farm. So what I created was very on the rails, and I think that's not what they wanted. They wanted more of a true D&D, which you can sort of do almost anything you want, and that is the beauty of Dungeons and Dragons. And it's always as like a dungeon master, it's very difficult to sort of, you know, I mean,
illusion of choice.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, it's always the worst example that I give people is like, you know, if you're on a boat, right, and you're sailing to an island. Me as the dungeon master, I have this island down to a T. I know exactly where you're going. I know exactly what you're gonna do, and you're on this boat. You're going there, and the players can be like, we're taking over this boat and becoming pirates, and we're gonna sail the open seas. And you're like, I didn't plan this.
This is almost literally our campaign right now.
Yeah. And that's the beauty for D&D is like you can do that.
Yeah.
But because I'm creating a show, it needs to be a little bit more on the rails.
Because you've literally printed out the island and painted it and driven it in a truck here.
Yeah. So I think some of them wanted a little bit more freedom. And which I totally understand. And some of them had valid concerns with the story and with certain aspects, and I want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with it, and it wasn't for them, which is fine. I think like the next time that I film, I think I'm going to be a little bit more little bit more straightforward and not keep certain things a secret. But also with that, I did learn a lot. I
Yeah.
learned a lot, and I actually restructured the story to sort of fit, because there was always, I don't want, it's hard because I don't want to like I don't want to spoil certain things
Yeah.
for anyone in a sense, but there was always a certain point where the story that I created was very heavily on the players and their backstories. So each of the characters had sort of like a bad nemesis person, right?
Yeah.
And each I'll call them a chapter. Each chapter would be about them. And
That's cool.
And I always struggled with how do you get, okay, you're the character, you have the bad person, then you fight the bad person, and then it's over. That's one episode. And it always felt like it was really rushed. And I actually restructured it a little bit because of, all the conversations that we had before with the creative concerns. And I think I like what I did better. And I think this is fine to say. So what I ended up doing was once that character meets like their nemesis, their arch rival, or whatever that person is, they're going to go into like, we're calling it a memory prison. So like they'll go back in time in like a memory, and all the players will go into like their
cool.
memories, and they'll like relive either one memory or several memories of that character to flesh out some backstory. So it's sort of like, I guess it's like a filler episode in a way, but then you can get more connected, and then you go back, and then you fight the bad person. So
But then the context, you get the character development of the stakes. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that was a better structure of what I wanted. Because like I said, I was really struggling hard with, point A to point B, what happens in the middle. Because that is the problem with making a show, is you only have so much time, you only have so much resources, you have, even filming, like we can only film for so long.
Yeah.
So it has to go quick, but not too quick, and then before you bore your audience to death.
I mean, you're shooting reality TV, right? Because this isn't really narrative, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's improvised, unknown, or like a live improv or something.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you hire the talent, the people, the companions?
Yeah, like
on the
what made you choose specific
So
things?
the two people. So originally, the two people that I had in mind was one was an actor that I've worked with before, and he did a phenomenal job, and I always for some reason I always saw him in this, and then there was another person as well that I wanted in to be involved as well. And from those two, they gave me some recommendations, and then I had the studio, the studio, it's called Sci-Fi Studios. The owner there, he gave me a recommendation for someone. So it was just two people that I knew, and then two recommendations, and
like based on their screen presence, or like what? Because the beauty of D&D is it can be anybody, because it's just real people playing it, but or like their creativity, or like.
So it was I'm in a combination. So the one recommendation, his name's Michael, and he actually was employed by Wizards. He works for D&D
really
Beyond.
cool.
Yeah, he's a writer for D&D Beyond. So which I thought, one, there's a connection right there, and also his knowledge of D&D. And the other thing that I really wanted to make sure I did was I wanted two people who knew D&D and two people who didn't know D&D.
It's a good mix. Yeah.
Exactly, because I've always found like you have someone who like knows the rules and you know what you can do, and then you have someone who doesn't know the rules and who's probably going to either break the rules or just do something because I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. And in a way, you're covering both of halves of the audience this way, because somebody might be watching it at a level really advanced or not, and they can kind of put themselves in those shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Me as the role as like the dungeon master. In the very beginning, I had a lot of self-doubt. And I didn't know if I wanted to do that role. I didn't know if I wanted to play the dungeon master. And that took, well, because one, I don't consider myself an actor. I don't really like being in front of the camera. And I I was thinking about hiring or getting someone else to do that. And then I took a lot of time to think, and I was like, well, when we were filming, right, I definitely had a lot of, like, I was like, oh my God, this is probably horrible. I'm probably doing a horrible job. Like, we had a bunch of like sound issues and things like that that we like worked through. There was like construction underneath us.
Oh, geez.
I would like, pause for a second and think about like what I was going to say. So I felt a lot of pressure because I was doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like even on the day, I didn't finish a puzzle and I had to spend like 45 minutes in the morning painting something to finish this puzzle because I was running out of time.
Wow.
But like looking back on that, I had a friend who was sitting in, and I had technically I had like 3 directors. I had like a technical director who like knew production. It was a buddy of mine who does a lot of commercial work and is in the film industry. And then I had 2 more creative directors. One was more of a writer and who knew like fantasy type style, and then one who like knew the rules of D&D, so like a D&D rules master was like my idea. Looking back, like if I had someone who was the dungeon master, right, and it wasn't me and it was someone else, I would be the like technical director and I would be behind the screen and I'd be watching the monitors and stuff. And I can see myself, if I was doing that, I wouldn't be having fun. The shoot day and everything didn't go exactly as planned. But then looking back on the edit, I loved it. I loved everything that we did, and I was like, "This is amazing." I love the way that it looks. I love the way that it sounded, and I know that that's what I want to do. Is like I want to do the dungeon master.
And I mean, it is another step when there's a camera involved, and like you're crafting this thing that's already like kind of your baby that you want to present to everybody. Like, look at all this work that I put into this, and now everybody gets to play around in this little playground that you made, but then also acting in that playground and thinking of all these things that you have to hit. But am I like good enough on camera? Is the camera even recording? Like there's just too many elements into it. My brain would probably explode.
No, and there was a lot. It was a lot of pressure. But I always knew going into it that it was going to be a lot at first. But as time goes by and as we
get better and more
we
comfortable.
get better,
Yeah.
If we get money behind all of this, that I can hire a production staff, like a production designer staff. Like I can have someone who's painting the minis. I can have someone who's 3D printing all these things. I can have someone who's dedicated for just the cameras and all these things. So I knew as time went on, I would have less responsibilities and I would know, and I would be able to just focus on the story, the Dungeon Master.
Yeah.
That's all I would have to. I can just say, hey, we're filming, the 16th, 17th, and 18th, and I just show up. I don't have to worry about anything else.
Yeah.
And that's eventually is like the goal.
And that is, I mean, that's a good director too, to give you a compliment with knowing how to allocate the things that need to be done to the right people. I think that I've worked with some people that I really respect as a person, but then I see them direct and they feel like they have to do everything because only they can do it to the standards that they want it done. And they end up burning themselves out and they can't move forward in the business because they can't get to that next level of, okay, this person's good at that. I'll have him do that. I'll have her do this. And then just that's how the project gets done. And then you also can, have slightly a little bit more free time in the process.
Oh yeah. And the burnout is so real. Even like right now where I'm at, it's like it's a lot. It's like it's still a lot of work.
Yeah.
And part of me is like, do I want to even continue doing this? And I think if I didn't have like my friend group who are pushing me to do this, I would probably not want to continue.
Yeah.
Just because it is a lot of work, and it is a lot of I put in everything that we did. I put in my own money. I put in about probably $8,000 to $10,000 of my own money, which isn't even a lot.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like it's crazy how how quick like money goes.
Yeah.
Especially with a project like this. I think I was like budgeting, like it can cost anywhere between 10 to 15,000 a day to shoot this.
Yeah. Okay, so you've now gotten to a point where you have, or you're close to having that pilot done, right? Edited, you're close.
Yeah. I would say editing wise, it's about 85% there right now. I would say it's about 85%.
Yeah.
For the initial of what we did.
Yeah, the thing that you now want to take and try to use to sell the entire idea.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And what are your plans trying to make that happen, to sell? Are you gonna? What are your thoughts on that? I'm very curious how you sell something like this.
I think the first step is some sort of crowdfunding thing. I think that helps a lot, and I started, and I need to figure out like which one's like the best, because there's a few, like there's GoFundMe, Kickstarter, Seed and Spark.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple other ones.
All different perks.
Yeah, and it's like which one is like the best for me.
Yeah.
So I'm in the process of making like a campaign. I'll shoot like a small video of me going, "Hey, give me your money," and then go from there. And then obviously after that, hopefully just the right person sees it. And also I am very fortunate I feel like I know a lot of people. Especially in like the film industry. Like I know a few people who have production companies, and I've talked to a couple of them, and it's all about networking. Like, hey, I have this thing. Do you know anyone who would be interested in this type of thing? To be, an executive producer or some sort of like the money person behind it. And obviously it's always a struggle of like, hey, we probably need to finish the first season. I'd say we probably need about 100 to 150,000. And obviously the more money that can go behind it, the cooler we can make it. We can, we can add visual effects. We can add, originally what we were thinking about doing for the show, which I think would be really cool, is anytime the characters were in a really cool location or like a key location, we're actually there. The players, so we build that set.
Oh, yeah.
Like if they're in the tavern, like this is like this whole episode takes place in the tavern. We film in a tavern.
That would be awesome.
I really wanted to do that, and that's just money.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Because right now the one you filmed is just in that cave
in
studio,
a cave,
right?
Yeah.
It's like a studio that is permanently decked out to be a cave.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And even with that, like, or if they're in the woods, like we build like fake trees and we're all around them. I didn't want to do any green screen or anything like that, mainly because I'm not a visual effects person. So.
Well, that's kind of the fun of it, like the tangibleness of the little characters and
also
like the imperfections. Like that's what makes it cool.
And I would believe that it would also affect the players.
Yeah.
Like if you're imagine if you're playing D&D, and I'm a very visual person, and that's why I wanted to be a lot of minis. Like that's why it's a little bit of a crutch, because, I'm not like the best at describing things, but you can see it. Like, look, here's a goblin. He's ugly. And then you put him on the table, and then I can have like a camera, like a little probe camera, like go in there next to him and be like, here's an ugly goblin.
Yeah.
And I've always loved the visual side of it. Yeah. And I think that's what immerses me into that environment. And I know the players would see that as well. And especially in like green screen. Like I hear a lot of like people who are on a thing. It's like, oh, I'm in this, I don't know, sci-fi spaceship, and all I am is a green screen. Like I feel like that takes you out of it. But if you had that, I feel like it becomes part of you. And I would think I thought I would get a better performance out of the players.
Too,
yeah.
I think you also have already kind of a built-in audience that's so passionate about it. Like I'm thinking of like the nerd side of YouTube and just how big that is and how many numbers there are. And like, because there's already products that relate to the piece of entertainment you're making, I feel like you're going to have a lot of success trying to sell this or market this. I mean, you were telling me you made a YouTube channel to kind of like feel out the water, and you already got some success through that. But just like these nerd things where there's another product attached to it, I think I think there's just a lot of space for content.
And he's saying nerd things in a good way, people.
We're nerd things. Yes,
No, we are nerds.
We're all nerds
We
here.
all know we are a bunch.
We started this talking about Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Magic the Gathering. So,
We are all a bunch of fucking nerds, and I fucking love it.
Yeah.
No, it's actually a key. I don't want to say selling point, but it is a key selling point because there is a built-in audience. The thing with Dungeons and Dragons, it's a very niche thing.
yeah.
And playing, like, episodes are about an hour and a half to 2 hours long. And every time I tell, like, someone who doesn't know, like, the world of D&D, I say that to them and they go, oh my God, that's a long, those are long episodes. Like, we want like 5-minute things, like 10-minute things. But it's like, it's crazy to think that it will be popular because look at what Critical Role is I think it's the most popular show out there, hands down. And their episodes are 4 to 5 hours long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're big boys.
And you think about that, and there's enough people out there who want to watch that stuff. So exactly, like I just posted behind the scenes stuff on a bunch of Facebook groups. And originally I didn't make a YouTube channel. I didn't even know I was going to call the show yet. When we were filming, I had two names that I was like thinking of. And one was The Dice Decide and one was The Campaign. And then it would be like The Campaign, whatever the sub
name,
thing. Yeah. Like the Lost Pages or the, Forgotten City or whatever. When I posted the behind the scenes on these Facebook groups, I got an overwhelming amount of people like, what is this? What is going on? Where can we find more of this? And I'm like, oh, now I have to make a YouTube channel. And I was like, okay, I'll make a YouTube channel real quick. So I made a YouTube channel and I put The Dice Decide because I was like, okay, that sounds like a cool name. Sure.
Yeah.
Because it was one of the ones that I was leaning towards. And I think we got like 3,100 followers in like 2 weeks or subscribers in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and we didn't have a single video. There wasn't even a single video. I had no content.
Wow.
And it was just from posting behind the scenes stuff.
Wow.
So I knew the hype was real.
Yeah.
But also I was also terrified because that also means that it has to be good. Because if you have this expectation of just like from a few photos that people want this to be good.
Yeah. And from what I've seen, it looks very cool.
Yeah,
I do have to say, I haven't seen a full thing, but the trailer is awesome.
Yeah, I can send you a rough cut of what we have so far. But no, visually, especially as like a cinematographer, I'm super happy with it. I had lighting cues, I had some cool effects that were happening, and also was very fortunate where I was able to pull in a lot of favors for this. I pretty much pulled in every favor that I had stored up was for this project. So I do some work with a lighting company called Aperture.
Yeah.
And I own a lot of lights and I own a lot of equipment, but there was some extra stuff that we needed and they filled in those gaps.
Oh, cool.
I'm really close with Canon. Canon actually sent me 2 cameras to shoot on. They let me use them for the shoot, and then I had to send them back. And then there's a microphone company called Deity, and they let us borrow their like Smart Slate and a couple of time code boxes. And obviously all the crew worked for free except for a couple key people. I paid for my key grip and my key gaffer, mainly for safety reasons. Like I needed someone with knowledge. And these are people who work all the time. So like they probably would have done it for free, but usually what happens in like this world is even like I will do some things for free sometimes, but if a job comes up, I have to take the job. I have to take the money. And I hate doing that to people. And it comes up so much where it's like, I have to bail on you because I'm getting a job. So I was like, hey, what's the least amount of money I can pay you to have you hold these days? And we worked that out. And then sound. Those are like the 3 people that actually got any money, and everyone else came out for free. We had a couple extra people. We're like, hey, you want to hang out for the day? I had some people do some behind the scenes stuff, and then I pulled, like I said, I pulled in all the favors that I could to try to make this work, because I knew it would be. Even still, I spent like 10 grand.
Yeah. No, it adds up. And how much is there a plan on, like, the project gets picked up by somebody, and then is there like a payment that goes out for people that have worked on the project, or for future projects that are going to be funded? Those are the same people that are going to be working on those. Or
That's always the hope and the goal.
Yeah.
It's always tough to say exactly what would happen, but I told myself that I wouldn't film this again unless I can pay people, because I know what that's like, doing something for free, and I could respect people's time and all that. So that's why I said if we do a second round of filming, no matter what, we have to have money. I won't do it if I can't pay my crew. And I know I can probably get people to do it again for free, but I don't want to do that. I don't, and because like I said, I know how that feels, and I just want to respect their time.
Yeah. And now you have the tangible product that you can, putting it in business terms. I don't like putting art into business terms, but that's what it is. Then you can then show to hopefully get buyers for the thing that you're selling.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like I've talked to a few companies. Actually, another sponsor that we had was WizKids.
Oh yeah, okay.
They actually sent me out a bunch of miniatures. They sent me out their like Warlock tiles. They sent me out a bunch of miniatures that I asked for. And it's always very difficult to be like, because I can only imagine that some of these companies, they probably get messages from all over the world saying, I'm working on something really cool and give me stuff.
Yeah.
Like that happens with any, company. And I was like, hey, I'm working on something really cool. Give me stuff.
Here I am.
And I know what I'm working on is going to be top notch. It's going to be a very high production value.
So what put you on the top of that list of say all those thousands of people asking WizKids, give me stuff? What put you to where WizKids actually is giving you stuff?
So the two things for me was, one, I think the projects that I work on and the social media stuff that I put out, the content that I put out on my social media definitely helps. Because I sent them like my demo reel and I sent them all that stuff, and like my demo reel, I personally think it looks pretty cool. It's a bunch of like behind the scenes stuff, and I work on some really, really cool things. I really do. I'm very fortunate to have worked on those, and with the amount of connections that I have, and be like, hey, this is who I have. I have connections with Canon. I have connections with all these people. Would you like to be a part of the list? And I think they can see that.
Yeah.
And the second thing was, I'm a part of a Facebook group. The owner of that Facebook group, they do a bunch of like D&D crafting and things like that. I reached out to him and I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. Would you like to I want to talk to someone at WizKids. That's how I approached him. And this is what I'm doing. Here's the things that I've worked on. Let me and you have a conversation first, because he already had that connection with WizKids. And we had a 2-hour long conversation. We were on the phone, we talked, and he thought, oh, this is an amazing project. I told him the story. He's like, oh, this is really cool. And he's like, yeah, I'll connect you with WizKids. So that was like sort of my foot in the door. Because I think that if I would have just approached them by myself, I don't think it would have happened. I think you need to have a recommendation or someone else who has a connection with them. Because I've reached out to, there's a company called Hero Forge. Are you familiar with Hero Forge? Hero Forge is actually really, really cool. I'm going to plug them, even though they don't sponsor me. Hero Forge is really cool because you can actually, you can make a custom miniature of whatever, if you're doing an elf paladin, right? You can go there and you can make an elf, and then you can like customize different swords, different poses, different outfits. And then you can either buy the file from them and then 3D print it yourself, or for extra money, you can have them 3D print it and they'll send it to you.
Okay.
And it's probably there's a couple companies that do that, but I think Hero Forge is like the biggest one. And I messaged them on Facebook and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I think I sent them the trailers like, oh, I really want to talk to someone on your team. And they give you a generic, hi, if you want to become a sponsor, email us. There's a form you can fill out online. And then that was it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I filled out that form online, and it's been like 5 months, and I haven't heard anything from anyone. Mm-hmm. But I know if I know someone who works there, or if I knew someone who knew someone, it would open that door.
Yeah.
And I think it's all about connections.
Totally. Mm-hmm. And where did Aperture and Canon come from? Just from jobs you've had in the past, gigs?
Yeah. So I mean, those. Because I've been in Los Angeles for 7 years. I've been 8 years, and I've been freelance for 7 years. And it's just all the work that I've done. I do a lot of networking and trying to meet as many people as I can. And I go to a lot of events. I go to a lot of film meetups. There's a lot of film equipment conventions in a sense. I think there's one called NAB. There's one called Cinegear. Cinegear's coming up. Cinegear is coming up in I think about a month or two.
Heard about that one.
That one's a lot of fun. I mean, it's just where you're going to the Paramount lot and it has all the new latest gadgets.
Toys.
Yeah. It's so much fun. And then I network that way. I go up to companies, I shake hands, I say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do. And every now and then you make a connection.
Yeah.
Canon used to, before the pandemic, they would do every Wednesday, they would do seminars at their place in Burbank. Mm-hmm. And I would go. If I had the day off, I would be there. And I would meet people and just talk to the the people who were involved. And after a while, they get to know you. Mm-hmm. They go, oh, we know you.
Well, you're a face. You're not an email.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
It definitely, I think showing face helps so much. Mm. And eventually after, like, there's a couple companies that, you spend 4 or 5 years with getting to know, and then eventually, like, oh, you know what? We have a new product. Would you want to try it out? Do you want to test it?
So they come to you, and they're
after that time, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's a company called Hollyland. They have like wireless. They have like wireless transmitters, and they have some audio stuff. They have wireless comms, and I've known them. I've known them for a long time, and then eventually they're like, oh, we know you. We know what you do. Would you want to try these out? Test them out in the field. Give us your honest feedback.
Yeah.
And then they let you have, they send you some stuff.
So for like 3 days or whatever, you just get to do with them whatever you want?
Yeah, well, it depends. It depends. Like, I'm at the point where someone will send me stuff and usually I get to keep it. And then my deal with them is either I have to give them social media stuff for it or Instagram story or whatever.
Yeah.
Here, this is the product. This is what I think of it.
You're a camera athlete.
Yeah, yeah. I don't like using the word like influencer, but like some because like I'm an ambassador with a couple of companies in the film industry. There's one called Shape. They make
I know Shape.
Yeah. So
They're
Shape, yeah, they're an amazing company based in Canada. They send me out some of their stuff, and then I plug them as much as I can. But also I love their stuff. I don't want to partner with a company who I wouldn't like.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense.
Or it's not. I mean, I guess part of it's, and I don't want to say like selling out, but like I believe in their product and I love their stuff and I think it's great.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit curious about how you got into the whole filming and camera side of things. Just working on sets. Do you do mostly like commercial stuff, or like what I saw just based on your Instagram? Like a lot of fantasy stuff as well. People getting shot with arrows and like all this cool stuff. And also your lineup of how you've progressed the cameras you've bought over the years. But kind of curious about your story there the last 7 years.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's a lot of it is just the right place, the right time, and a little bit of luck. When I first moved out here, I had a friend who was doing production design at UCLA. And he's like, hey, you want to come and hang out on set with us and learn? And I was like, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. And at the time, I was also my friends that my roommates that I live with, we each were like, okay, I bought a camera. The one bought sound equipment and the other one bought lights. Mm-hmm. That was like the thing. So I had a camera. I had a 5D Mark III. and I was like, well, can I bring my camera onto set and just take photos? And they're like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. So when I was doing some stuff at UCLA, I would just brought my camera and I would just take behind the scenes photos, which I didn't really know was a job. Technically, I was just like, I just want to take photos because I think it'd be cool and I want to document like what I'm doing. And from there, I did that for like a year and a half on just various projects, and that sort of built like a behind the scenes like portfolio. And also at the same time, I was a production assistant at for a production company, and I would just mainly do like office work, and then they would do commercials. They did some like Lowe's commercials and things like that, and I would be a PA on those sets.
Yeah.
And they knew that I did behind the scenes work, and eventually they got a deal with MGM, and they did Stargate. They did Stargate Origins.
That's cool.
They were like, we need someone to do behind the scenes work. Do you want to do behind the scenes work on this?
No.
And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, no, that doesn't sound like fun.
D&D session plan.
I'm okay.
Yeah. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. So when they gave me that opportunity, I bought a Canon C200.
Yeah.
And
Great cameras.
And pretty much that job we shot for like I think 30 plus, I think 32 days. I was able to afford that C200. And then from there it just all builds. And then it's just like a snowball effect, and every job leads to the next job. Each job you meet a new person. For the Aperture thing, it was at UCLA. I met his name's Ted. He's like the president of Aperture right now. I met him on a set of UCLA, and we are friends on Facebook. And then there's a couple other people who worked at Aperture that I was friends on Facebook. And one of them posted, "Hey, we need someone to shoot behind the scenes." And I'm like, I can do that. I just got done working this cool job. I have a Canon C200. And he's like, "You're hired."
Yeah, you got it.
That's it. I just answered a Facebook post.
Yeah.
I was just the first one to say I can do it.
That's great.
And then from there, once again, you build your Aperture stuff. And now, I mean, I've been shooting with Aperture for like 6 years. And in the very beginning, what they would do is, you get paid in lights. You can either get they were like, well, you can either get a check, or you can get more of a value with a light.
Yeah. No.
And I'm like,
I'd pick the light. Yeah.
I'd rather have the light.
Uh-huh.
So I would work with them like twice a month, once every other month, and then I would build an arsenal of lights. And then I would rent out those lights. And there's there's a thing called ShareGrid, and it's like it's like a peer-to-peer rental thing. And then I would meet people on ShareGrid. Like I became a cam op on a YouTube show for Awesomeness TV, because I think they rented filters from me on ShareGrid, and they're like, "Hey, we need a cam op. We're shooting tomorrow or something. Do you want to hop on?" And I'm like, "Sure, sounds good." And then I started cam opping on this YouTube show.
From renting,
from renting equipment.
They just have the name. You had to have your name, and
then we start talking, and it's like, oh yeah, I do this, I do that. I'm a cam operator. I'm an AC, and then you just build up all of those connections.
You're a networking machine.
Yeah, I mean, well, you have to network out here, man.
Yeah.
It's so competitive, and you never know who you're gonna meet. Mm-hmm. I get jobs. I just got a job this month. Someone I met 4 years ago. I worked with them once, and we follow each other on Instagram. And they's like, "Hey, they're looking for someone to shoot behind the scenes stuff," and I'm like, "Awesome, yeah, let's do it." And that was it. Just from one person that I met 4 years ago.
Wow.
You just do that enough times with enough people that eventually you don't have to worry about like when your next job's gonna happen. Like for instance, like next month. This month I'm set. I booked out. For the most part, booked out. I need to work 8 or 9 days to like be fine, be comfortable, live comfortably, and I think I'm at like 13 right now for this month. But next month, I have no clue. I don't have a single job. I don't have a single job lined up. I have no idea if I'm going to get a job, but I know I'm going to get a job.
And that's been, how long would you say it's been to get to that point for you of like the 7 to 8 years that you've been here? How long did it take where it's like, oh, I don't have a job next month, but I know something would probably work out?
It's tough to say. So the thing that I'm good at is I do a lot of different, I don't want to say like I wear many hats or I'm a jack of all trades. But in the very beginning, it was just a bunch of PA work. I did a bunch of PA work.
Yeah.
And I knew I would get I knew I would get just PA work.
Yeah.
And every now and then I would get behind the scenes stuff. So like so that's where that comes with that main hustle. My main hustle was PA work. Side hustle, behind the scenes stuff. And eventually
Building the side.
I was able to not do any more PA work and only focus on camera work behind the scenes. I was an assistant camera for a few DPs. I AC for. I pull focus. I have like a full focus pulling thing, and eventually that becomes that. So like I don't take any more PA jobs, and that took about, I want to say 4 years. Okay. I think about 4. I think I PA'd for about 4 years, and now it's just camera work.
But it didn't really come from like, oh, I was a PA for 4 years, and then I got this massive job from being a PA. It sounds like the people that hired you as a PA kept hiring you as a PA because that's just what they knew you by.
Exactly. And eventually, so like everyone's seen it, and I don't know what exactly your audience is, but like a lot, if you're a PA, right, you're probably going to get hired as a PA next.
Yeah.
And then there's always that PA that like shows up on set and you're like, oh yeah, what do you do? It's like, oh, I'm also a director. And then like it's like, oh, I'm also a cinematographer, but you're PAing on this commercial.
Yeah.
Like you're a PA. Yeah. But eventually you do that enough, and then someone's like, hey, I'm a PA, you're a PA. I'm working on this really cool project. Do you want to be my director?
Yeah.
And then now the next project you both are directing. You're directing or you're a cinematographer, whatever that relationship is, and then that builds, and then you go from there.
But it's going to come from the other PAs, not from that like magical producer that comes up to you. Hey, why don't you do the next?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. It really depends. Like it's so situational, but you never know. I mean, yeah. I usually when I would PA, I would try to stay close to the camera department. Yeah. I would always stay close to the camera department.
Yeah.
Because there's a camera PA position.
Right.
So if you're hanging around with the camera people and they get to know you, and the camera world is so cliquey.
Yeah.
Like they always work with the same people.
Very much so.
Always work with the same people. Because it's probably in my opinion, it's probably one of the coolest jobs. I love cameras. Yeah. Like everyone loves like it's cool, it's fancy, it looks cool, technology. So I would hang out with them. And eventually, you become friends with them. Hey, what's your social media? What's your Instagram? And you connect. And then what if their friend, isn't feeling well, or he gets another job? It's like, oh, what was that one PA? He was really cool. Let's get him on as a camera PA. Mm-hmm. Then you show up as your camera PA and you're helping them. And then if you do a good job, if they like working with you, hey, can you be our second AC?
Yeah.
And then it goes from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just really depends on. It just really just depends. Like I don't think there's a formula for how to get to point A to point B.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's always going to be different for everyone. I think it's very situational. I know a lot of people who I think film school is a whole another conversation, but like even going to like film school, I know a lot of people who go to film school together, Chapman or AFI, and they all work together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All the time.
Seen that a lot.
They work together, and I know a couple people, the DP who did the Stargate show, he just got done working on a huge show. And I was like looking who was like working with them. It's people that they went to college with.
Yeah. And I think that's the most valuable thing. It's classes and getting to play with the fun toys that the college provides is great, but you're meeting, Yannick and I met from college, not from really a film school too. We were just doing film at a University of Oregon and now doing projects together. The momentum keeps going. I don't think I would have kept going if I didn't have friends doing similar fields that I already knew I could work well together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all about, and I'll go back to it. It is all about connections. Mm-hmm. And it's also about attitude. It's also about, in the film industry, for the most part, we're working 10 to anywhere to like, hopefully not like 15 hours a day with each other. We have to like each other.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's you're going to be miserable. Mm-hmm. So you have to have like a good attitude. You have to be happy. You have to be good to work with. And I've found, at least I think I'm okay to work with. Some people think so. But you just have to have like a good attitude. And it's all about attitude, right place, right time, and just persistence.
Mm-hmm. Something that I learned from my dad being a salesman. He always talks about have your elevator pitch ready, and you never know. It reminds me of that when you talk about like, oh, I was a PA, but I also did a side hustle, and the side hustle kind of grew. You always had, like, you were talking about your side hustle. You were talking like, oh yeah, I do background photography or behind the scenes. Just knowing that sentence, just knowing what do I tell people in that given situation of, I do art on the side, or I love taking pictures of flowers in nature, selling it online. I don't know. Having that sentence to tell to people allows that to keep going. And it works for, I would say, screenplays of a lot of the things I've gotten into, the bigger jobs that I never knew or never could imagine I could get into came from just talking to a person about something that I like doing. And then that person was like, oh, well, Hayden likes doing this, and I have this opportunity. Let's talk to Hayden about it. And so I think that has really helped me kind of advance because people know what I want. And so I guess knowing what you want is the first thing. Ask that question, and then seeing the best way you can tell that to people when that question is being asked, because it will be asked a lot.
It's like every time first question. That's like part of it's right before, what town are you from?
Yeah.
Right after, what's your name?
Mm-hmm. What do you want? What do you want?
Yeah.
I want to see where you want to be going. In 5 years from now, this is a question we ask everybody.
Yeah.
What do you want to see yourself in 5 years? Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be?
Yeah. What I want right now is I really want to get a studio space.
Yeah.
I really want to get a studio space. And for two reasons. One, because I do own a lot of equipment and I'm running out of room.
Oh, yeah.
I'm running out. There's like no more room. And I want to be able to get a studio space so I can just film there. I think the whole goal that I want to do is I would love to be a cinematographer on shows like The Witcher, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, something high fantasy style. I would love to work on those. And if I was the DP on that would make me happy. And I truly think the only way for me to get to that level is to do it on my own.
Yeah.
So if I have a studio space, if I can, start there, then I can, that will build up. I'll be able to get more equipment. I'll be able to get another studio space. And then I'll be able to be financially okay where the studio spaces are making me passive income, or these equipment that I have, I'm renting them out. I can have passive income. Then I'm just at a point where it's like, I'm making a lot of money. I can make a feature film with my friends, and I have studio space to film it, and I have the funds. I can pay my friends and just make movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Switching to like a higher position, or kind of going towards those dreams, there's always like growing pains where there's like a lull in your work, at least from my experience, unless you really ride out the side hustle until you're really stable in it. So like having that security blanket set up like that income, I've thought about similar things, ways to make that happen to overcome those growing pains. The accompanying question is if this podcast is a time capsule, which it is, and if we were to send you this in 10 years, what would be the message you would leave for yourself?
I know the true answer and what I want to say. What I want to say is keep up with the grind and all that. And then the real thing is to make sure that I spend time with the people that I love. I think that's a really hard thing to do. especially in the film industry, because like I'm always on the grind, right? And I know, like, even thinking about having a family right now, man, I don't even know how people do it.
Yeah.
You're working 12 hours, 14, 15 hours a day. If you're doing that, and your significant other, if who's taking care of the kid, either they have to sacrifice their work, or whoever that is, if they have their own career, who's raising the kid? Someone else is raising the kid. Like I know, and that's, to me, that's what's really scary, is because I'm 33, right? And I want a family. I think that would be lovely, but I can't even imagine having a family right now.
Yeah.
So I would tell myself to make sure that I'm trying to spend the time with the ones that I love, with family, with friends, and all of that. I think that's because I mean, you probably hear it from a lot of people is, when you're gone, like the ones who are going to remember you the most are friends and family, not your job.
Yeah.
No, if depending on what field you work in, if you unfortunately something happens for you, your employer is gonna have someone try to fill your spot immediately.
That project needs to be done.
Yeah. So, and that's another reason why I do like work. That's another reason why I wanted to work in the film industry, is I want to. It's a lot deeper. I think this is like the root of a lot of it is I want to be remembered.
Yeah.
I think everyone wants to be remembered in a way. Because, like, think about it. Like, people who lived 200 years ago, we I don't know, we don't know any of those people. Unless they, like, there's probably almost, there might be no documentation that this person ever existed. So, like, to me, I'm like, was that life meaningful? In a weird way. Of course it was, but, like, if you don't know something exists, then it's like, it's just there.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to work in the film industry because I felt like making a movie or being a part of a movie or being part of something, there's something physical there that will hopefully carry on for the rest of time. At least until, like, the world explodes, but whatever. But, like, we're at like an age where technologies, you can have something that stays around for the longest time. Like, I even look at, like, old it's always crazy when I watch, like, an old I'll rewatch New Girl. I don't know if you watch New Girl. It's a hilarious,
I know of it. No.
It's a really funny show, but, like, I'll watch old episodes and then I'll see, like, the actor today. I'm like, oh, they look so different. But it's just like, I don't know. It's just like you felt like you just saw them, like, but they look completely different. And eventually they'll probably be gone, but you'll always have that show.
And I think an element to that, outside of just, like, the legacy being a part of film, but what film brings, which is more family. There's such a community aspect when you're working with all these people. There's more friends, and you're always working together, and you end up making more and more different groups of people that you can call your family.
Yeah.
Because you just build these with doing these projects. You go to hell and back together, and you can rely on all these people. And they're just a second family to you, and you can then, regardless whatever happens, you have all these, for the who remembers me when I die kind of question, you have all these people that you worked with, and yes, the film keeps going and the projects keep going, but you have all these people are going to remember you. That's
It kind of
how
even
I think of
mimics the like normal family dynamics, because there's the DP in your case, who's maybe more like a father, like mentor kind of figure, and then there's the people that are at your level that maybe if you're the first to see the second AC, kind of like that, but it kind of mimics family structure in a weird way, I think, unlike perhaps some other jobs where everybody's doing the same thing. If it's like it is like a second family, and that I think can kind of push the film people's desire to have families, or maybe never having families, kind of aside or prolong that, because it does feel like family sometimes. Yeah, it kind of feels that hole.
I don't want to be forgotten. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't. And I don't know. I wonder how many other people think that. Like I want to be remembered.
I very much relating to that
like,
desire. That's
like,
why I'm asking.
otherwise, it's like obviously, yeah, you live a good life, but if no one knew you existed, to me it feels pointless. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've always I want someone, because like I said, like in 300, 400 years, we'll be long gone. Our kids will be long gone.
Yeah.
And I feel like life is, what is it? Stranger than fiction. Life's stranger than fiction, or
Something like that.
And like I have a friend, his name's Robbie, and he's a cinematographer. And I think this guy's an artist. Like there's like some people who there's some DPs who are like, oh, I'm a cinematographer. I film things and I make pretty images. But I look at him as he is an artist. He, oh my God, he's crazy. He found these recordings of, it was like a tape recording from an old answering machine. And there's hundreds of these tapes, right? And he's like, I want to make there's a story here. Yeah. Cause like I forget the guy's name, but like no one knows who this person was, right? Never going to be remembered. And he's like, but I have the power to make them like to be remembered. Just in these like tapes, and they're like crazy tapes, because like back then you didn't have text. You can't be like, hey, I'll be home at 7:00, make some dinner. Like you had to leave a message on the phone, be like, hey honey, I'll be home at 7:30. I'm picking up at the grocery store. I'm doing all these things. Hey, this is what happened at work. Like you would have, like, that was how you communicate, and you probably wouldn't, if you're whoever it was didn't get it for a few days, just sitting on the answering machine. So it's just really interesting. And I when he said like no one, I forget the guy's name, but like, he's like, no one, he's like, I can guarantee you in the past 10, 15 years, no one has said this person's name. Probably has never said his name. Yeah. And now they can through this, what he wants to make. And he's trying to get like the rights to like make this into like a feature. It's actually really interesting.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think in a way the idea of like the podcast and that the question with the time capsule is kind of very much about that, freezing a moment in time and what that person was like before they perhaps make the biggest thing or the big thing. I see you getting to fulfilling your fantasy dreams, working in the fantasy entertainment area, and this is kind of like freezing that. I think it's very interesting, the whole concept of wanting to be remembered and why, and we're saving what you are right now, and we're going to send it to you in 10 years, and you're going to be shocked. I don't know.
Yeah.
It might feel familiar. It might feel very foreign.
Do you have any final thoughts?
Not necessarily. I mean, whoever's listening to this, I always tell people, I think the biggest thing is just don't give up. Even though like it sucks sometimes, like no matter what you're going through, I think there's certain people out there that are, your friends and acquaintances and stuff like that. But like whoever you're like your friend, whoever your closest friends are, just always keep them close. Just like, and have them, and just you just do what you got to do and try to make it happen, whatever that thing is.
Well, thank you so much for being on.
I don't know if you're recording or not, but like
I'm still recording it.
I really don't like being a player. I think I like DMing more.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've only DM'd because I needed to make it happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no one else is gonna do this, so I'll make it happen. But I've always I ideally would just want to be a player.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I don't know. Maybe it's because like every time I've had I mean, I'm a player right now in a friend game, and I am enjoying myself. I am having fun.
It is tough. I mean, and like relating it with films and stuff too, of like when you find the things you like and you know how all the technical little stuff works, and you no longer get to really see it and just have fun in the moment. You're just always like, oh, that lighting was like a little bit down tilted, and like it kind of takes you out of the moment. But it's probably a little bit like that with being a player, but also being a DM of like, oh, I would have done something differently.
Yeah, and also like I think it's being a player. I think I'm getting better at it now, but like having your person, whoever your character is, and having that, your backstory, and like you have all this stuff that one person. I just like I like the DM where I can have I'm 20 different people. And some of the backstory and all this stuff doesn't matter. Like I have a hard time like focusing on one person and fleshing out one person, having like what their story is, because I always feel like it's in my head. I don't want it to be finite. And then, but I think also in like D&D, I don't think it really matters, because like I was playing the game that I'm playing in, like we played. I think we've had like 6-7 sessions, and all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna be an artist. I'm gonna, and now every time like someone dies, like a humanoidish person, I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna sketch them. I'm like, I'm gonna do that. I think originally I had this idea that a player had to be, you're that character, and you really can't change too much. Like all of a sudden you can't just be like, oh, I'm just this now. But I think it depends on the group and stuff.
Yeah. And like, I mean, you're just trying to have fun. Like if you're not having fun because like you're so deep into that's not what my character would do, then it's like you probably should move on or play another game.